So, this is a good opportunity to start by saying that, lithium ion is something that is coming. There's nothing we're going to do to stop it. So this conversation, really, we're trying to work towards the marina, towards the boatyard. We're not doing a lot of technical stuff here. We're talking more about how to embrace this industry or not embrace this part of the industry. So to do that, we've got three really great experts, all right? I've got Kerry over here. She's the insurance side of the house. Jonathan in the middle. He's the practical surveyor, field rep side of the house. And Maciej, if I got that right, Bob, I'm going to call him because it's easier for me. And he's the standards guy from ABYC, American Boat and Yacht Council. So we wanted to bring these three experts in to answer your questions and to talk about what we're going to face with lithium ion in the future, okay? So to do that, let's just look at a couple things. Who would want that thing? Who would want lithium ion? The expense, the danger, that full contraption, unbelievably dangerous. And yet, somehow, we all embraced the automobile back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So is this the automobile? Do we want to stay on our horses? Do we want to stay with lead acid batteries? Do we want to shift to lithium ion? Is lithium ion the new auto, what is it? It might be. If it's a Tesla, it certainly is, right? So that's what we want to try to discuss today, and hopefully we can be as interactive as possible with you all. How many marina owners? All right, and boatyard owners? Similar, same, okay. So hopefully we'll answer your questions. Everybody but Terry. We won't answer Terry's question, sorry. But so to get us started, let's hear from ABYC. Let's hear where the standards are going. Let's hear where we are from a standards perspective within the country and around the world. Come on up.
Hey, thank you, Dan, for that introduction. So, yes, my name is Maciej Rynkiewicz, and I work for ABYC. I'm a standards developer there. And we actually have the standard for the lithium-ion batteries for the installation on boats. And the one thing that I don't agree with, Dan, is that the lithium-ion batteries are not coming. They're already here. And there is nothing we can do to stop them. Everybody is... even if we realize that or not, we all carry our lithium-ion batteries with us, with the cell phones, with all the power tools, laptops. And naturally, the lithium-ion batteries are also installed on boats. So our role here as the standard developing organization is to develop the standards for the installation of the lithium-ion batteries on boats, because if we don't do that, what happens? Nothing. People will still install lithium-ion batteries on boats because they have certain advantages over traditional lead-acid technology. So let's do a quick overview of the terminology. I don't know if that microphone works. Oh, that may be better when I get closer. So let's do a quick overview of the terminology and what the main things are when it comes to the lithium-ion battery. So what is lithium-ion battery? Anybody knows what is the lithium-ion battery? Other than it's that extremely dangerous piece of thing that you should stay away from it and don't get close to that. Okay, so basically lithium-ion battery is the like umbrella term that you put all kind of devices in, all kind of different chemistries and technologies. Basically it refers to the device that you have lithium ions going between the cathode and the anode inside the battery, inside the electrolyte, during the charging and discharging process. But there are different chemical compounds inside these batteries. When we talk about lithium-ion batteries, it's important that we are specific and we talk about the specific type of the battery that we're referring to. For example, this laptop here, it contains probably lithium cobalt oxide battery. some of your electric cars, if you have electric car. Who got electric car? Okay. Any problems, fires there? No? They run good? Okay, glad to hear that. So in your in your electric cars, you have either lithium iron phosphate batteries or lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide. They are totally different chemical compounds. So when we say lithium ion battery and they have this and this property, we need to be specific. Otherwise, we're comparing apples to carrots. The lithium-ion batteries that are installed on boats are, I would say, 90%, even more, lithium iron phosphate batteries. And they have specific properties when it comes to the energy density, thermal stability, safety, etc., etc. There is a small percentage of the both lithium-ion batteries that are taken directly from the electric car technology, and these systems like BMW, they use lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide. They're a little bit different, also more energy density, less thermal stability. So we have like a few basic terms for the lithium-ion batteries here. So what is the safe operating envelope and the battery management system? Because before we actually go to the thermal runaway, or maybe we can start from the thermal runaway because that's what everybody is concerned about. What is that thermal runaway? So that's when the fire starts. That's when we see all these violent videos on YouTube and on TV or whatever, TikTok, whatever you are following. So that's the thermal runaway. It's that self-propagating exothermic chemical reaction when you have that fire, self-fueling fire. And how that happens is we have the short between the anode and the cathode that generates some heat. That heat raises to a certain level, and that causes to decompose the cathode material. So the oxygen from the cathode, which is usually like lithium salt or something like that, the oxygen from the cathode material is fueled into the fire. And that is fueling that fire, that makes that fire worse. And therefore, even if you cut the oxygen supply by submerging the battery in the water, for example, the thermal runaway will still continue because it will take the oxygen from the decomposition of that cathode. So that's thermal runaway. And we have the safety standard, E13, that the primary objective of the standard is to prevent the thermal runaway. So what we do? We have the safe operating envelope, and what that is, it's basically a set of limits that's set by the battery manufacturer. It's a low voltage limit, high voltage limit, low temperature limit, and high temperature limit. And these parameters, they should not be exceeded during the normal operation of the battery. And how we do that? That's what the BMS, battery management system, is for. So basically what the BMS does, it senses these conditions above or below the safe operating envelope and disconnects the battery from either the load or the charging source. That's how it works. If that happens, we won't go into the thermal runaway. Chemistry matters. So that's what I already mentioned, that when we talk about lithium-ion batteries, it's wise to talk about specific chemistry, because otherwise we'll like, comparing bicycles to airplanes. They're different. They have different chemicals. They have different properties. Are lead-acid batteries dangerous? Oh, yes. They emit hydrogen, which is highly explosive, and we have the safety standards for how to install it and how to vent them so they won't explode. And have we seen any lead-acid battery explosions recently? I haven't heard about nothing in the recent years. So yes, the standard works. So what do we have when it comes to the standards? We have our E13, which is the lithium-ion battery installation standard. And when it comes to the ABYC standard, we need to remember that this standard addresses the boat. So it starts from the boat, and the standard ends where the shore power ends. It ends at the power pedestal on the dock. Everything outside of that is outside the scope of the ABYC standard. We don't address the installation on the docks. We don't address anything that's going on in the boatyard, inside the workshops. We address the boat up to the pedestal. Everything else is other organization. NFPA, for example, they have National Electrical Code, and the next publication, I think, will be in 2026. They'll have some more information, for example, for installing high charging stations in the marinas, because now there is nothing about installation in the marinas, but they are working on it. So the E13 addresses the installation and selection of the battery for the installation on the boat. We don't address all other stuff that people bring on the boats. We don't address electric scooters, electric laptops, cell phones, tools, all kind of crap that contains lithium-ion batteries that are most likely different type of the chemistry that you install on the boat. Most of these electric tool toys, they have little lithium cobalt oxide batteries, which are which have the lowest thermal stability from all the lithium-ion family. Because let's remember, lithium-ion, it's an umbrella term. It has all that type of chemistries that have lithium ions traveling between the anode and the cathode. But the chemicals inside are different. So what do we say in E13? Just a few highlights. You have to have BMS. You have to follow manufacturer's spec when it comes to the staying within the safe operating envelope, how to restrain the batteries, how to protect them from shock vibration, how to protect them from water ingress. Water ingress is one of the main causes that creates problem with lithium-ion batteries. And also the selection of the battery. We state, and that's the current language, we state that the lithium-ion batteries that are installed on boats, they must meet the testing requirements of certain either UL, IEC, or SAE standards. These are the standard developing organization that develop all these testing requirements, electrical testing and environmental testing. So they actually, a lot of manufacturers use, for example, UL 1973. They have a lot of electrical, and they're pretty brutal testing that just to make sure that the BMS does a job and the batteries won't fail and won't go into the thermal runaway. So in E13, we don't have any testing requirements. We refer to the industry testing spec, either IEC, UL, or SAE. And the ABYC standard is currently open for the review. It's an open process. If anybody is interested in developing the ABYC standards for the boats, everybody can submit the comment. Everybody can be present at the committee meeting and express their concerns and share their experience. If you are interested, just let me know.
Perfect.
And I think I overstayed my.
No, you did great.
Here.
That's great.
So thank you, everybody. If you have further questions, we'll have more discussion.
Yeah, so we're going to move on now to kind of the field view of this, because if you listen to a lot of people, fires don't happen, and yet we in the insurance industry see fires all the time. We see fires involving lithium-ion batteries. And this guy right here has probably more experience in the investigation of these types of accidents than anybody. So we're going to get to Jonathan now, and it's all you, man.
Morning, my name's Jonathan Klopman. I'm a marine surveyor. I'm just a boatyard guy. I don't know what to say like you. If I go visit someplace and I'm on vacation or whatever and there's a boatyard, I stop in and I look at the boatyard. You guys do it, admit it. I'm just coming here from the sake of reality. See right here, there are 4 problems I have here. Inspectability of these systems. Who is going to be the one inspecting and blessing these systems? The flammability, yes, it's there, right? The accountability. If something does go wrong, is anyone going to step up, admit what happened, take responsibility for it, and make sure it didn't happen again? And liability. As a facility, even though it's not your boat, are you going to get tagged if something goes wrong? Oh, Jesus, what happened? How do I go back?
Like that.
Okay. 1. Okay. We're going to have to go with this one at a time because Dan took away. If we look at the risk, thermal runaway. Thermal runaway is a possibility. It exists. Just because they came up with lithium iron phosphate, don't believe that they don't run away. Yes, there are accidents. Yes, lithium iron phosphate batteries do start fires, right? It's not perfect. Do I believe that Tesla is a good company? Sure I do. Do I think they make good products? They make excellent products. Are there still fires with Tesla cars? Yes, there are. Okay. There's a significant risk to other boats. If you have a boat in your marina and they decide that they want to have lithium-ion batteries on there, is there a risk to other boats surrounding there? Of course there is. What's the most terrifying thing that you all have for your facility? It's having a fire that takes out half a dozen boats and your docks. All right? Next, suppression. At this point, they're still working on suppression. They're working really hard. There are some great companies. However, it's really pretty dodgy. If lithium ion is taken on, if you allow them in your facility, are you going to have to foot the bill for specific suppression for all of this? I don't know. Questions. I don't have the answers, right? Toxic gas. This is something that is the dirty little secret no one wants to talk about. Sure, a conventional lead acid battery can emit hydrogen. I get that. In over 35 years surveying and investigating accidents, have I ever had an explosion from hydrogen from, lead acid batteries? I'd have a hard time with it, but I can't think of it. Okay, when you have a fire with a lithium-ion battery, it does emit toxic gas. That could be carbon monoxide, it could be carbon dioxide, but the real ticker is it emits hydrofluoric acid in gaseous form. If anyone does try to suppress that fire, they will be exposed to that. If there's a fire on the boat, anyone in the area can claim that they were exposed to that. Medically speaking, people don't realize this. You can't detect that exposure or quantify that afterwards. So that's a real issue. The long-term effects on your insurance rates. We'll get into that.
Kerry, we'll get into that for sure.
Of course. Okay, balancing all of this. What's the reward of having lithium-ion batteries? So at your facility, how many dozens and dozens of people have been breaking down your doors demanding that their boat be repowered with lithium-ion batteries? I just don't see a huge demand for it at this point in time. It's quite a limited appeal. The competitive advantage is embracing lithium-ion technology going to drive business to your marina. For all of these people that want a haven, a safe haven for their lithium-ion powered boat. No, I don't see that.
Well, let me stop right there, Jonathan. Let me ask the people who have the marinas and boatyards, because I think this is important. How many people have installed or do install, have their service departments, lithium-ion systems on board boats? All right, so we have a few. How many have sell or service electric boats? Okay, one. Have you installed a station a charging station yet. We're going to. All right. So the balance there, and this will be where NEC 555, the 26 regulations come out as to how those need to be serviced and installed and so forth. So you'll be dealing with that on the shore side as well. We had one fire on a boat and I'm trying to think whether it was Colorado or California, I can't remember, that had just charged up using a charging station, and a few minutes later was a crispy critter, let's just say. So there are concerns. So I would just caution everybody who's going to start to get into that to make sure you're doing it professionally. All right, sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
So, and then moving on, it's not a long-term capital investment. Fine, you could get the charging stations, I suppose. You could sell the batteries in your marine store, but I don't see it as investing in a travel lift or something that's really going to, drive business, push the marina forward. And finally, in terms of the reward, if you do embrace this and you do have direct involvement, then you're embracing the liability with it. Just a thought. What's the next one? Potential energy. This is worth talking about. What are we talking about in terms of energy in here? Well, with the electric vessels, of course, they're high voltage boats, so you could forget about 12 volts. I mean, the industry is moving towards 24 volt anyway, but everything here is 48 volt and above. Significant stored energy. Each one, a group 31 lithium ion battery, lithium iron phosphate, is around 1,300 to 1,600 watt hours of energy. And of course, you're not going to have one on the boat, you're going to have a whole bunch. So it's quite a bunch of stored energy. It's custom one-off designs, right? You're not going to have, this is, a Ford system that was engineered and we took 50 of them and crashed them against a brick wall. You're going to have some engineering firm in Seattle who drew up the system for this one boat, and they made 10 of them. We're talking about really limited stuff. And legacy support in these high energy systems, who's going to be there in 5 years to help support all of this stuff? On the other side, the potential energy with small devices. Maciej was right in mentioning that a lot of these problems are set by small devices. But just so people have an idea of relative power, so a cell phone or laptop is around 10 to maybe 100 watt hours. A cordless tool, a cordless battery like a 12-volt cordless battery might be 40 watt hours. A drone battery, 19 to 77. Then we get into the larger stuff like water scooters, 500 watt hours. An e-bike is 300 to 1,000 watt hours. Those foiling boards get up there, 1,500 to 2,500 watt hours, right? When it comes to, in terms of dealing with the potential energy, the smaller devices are a different chemistry. They are far more volatile than lithium iron phosphate. The huge advantage of the small devices, even though they're volatile, is you could throw them overboard, right? And we could stop it right there.
Let me just say one thing also. Everyone knows about the Conception. We've all heard about the Conception, the dive boat fire that was out in California. The current thinking by the NTSB is that fire started as a result of charging stations for dive cameras, dive lights, cell phones, you name it. They were all laying behind a sofa or cushioned area, and they were all plugged in. Yeah, obviously, that was a very tragic situation. 32 people perished in that fire. But again, it wasn't the vessel itself. It was all of these small devices. And you see the mega yacht market, and I think that Kerry's going to talk about this, the mega yacht market having some current restrictions with underwriting and underwriters looking at this because people have the water scooters, they have the foiling boards, they have e-bikes and so forth that are all on board these mega yachts. And these are the devices that are going up and they're causing severe damage, if not total loss of the vessels. So
there's a great presentation come out to me afterwards. ABL, a group of surveyors in England, did a great presentation a couple of weeks ago discussing this and a new standard for larger yachts. Yes, and the 30 to 40 meter yachts and larger have garages filled with these water toys, and that's what's going up. If you think that it isn't happening, in that presentation they mentioned in the last year, I think, or 2 years, they've had 20 to 24 mega yachts go up because of these water toys. So the idea that this isn't happening is not true. Okay, so replacement batteries. This is something that you might run into. Rely on batteries. I didn't say that name. Are you going to sell these batteries in your store? What do you know about the charging system on the boat? Some guy comes and he buys the batteries, and they advertise that they're drop-in replacements. Well, do you know what he has for charging and monitoring on his boat? What about the installation? Who's going to bless the installation? Well, you sold him the battery, right? Are you going to service the batteries? It's the end of the season. I don't know. Folks who are up north of here, we have to winterize boats. Are you going to disconnect the batteries? Are you going to touch anything on the battery? Well, if you leave the battery in the boat and it gets to freezing, we have to remember with a lot of these chemistries, they don't like to freeze, they don't like to heat up, right? Who's going to remove them from the boat at the end of the season? Are you going to take on that responsibility, or are you going to tell boat owners to remove their own batteries from the boat? If you don't service them, who's going to do it, right? So my point here is that as a boatyard in a marina, you're not going to have control of the risk with these items. You're not going to control the design. You're not going to have any control over the installation. Are you going to service and monitor that installation? What have you got for crews right now? How many people, raise your hands, how many people at the boatyards have an electrical engineer on staff? Good for you. How about suppression? Are you going to have a suppression system for lithium ion batteries? You're going to send someone in the big poopy suit so he doesn't get hurt by the hydrofluoric acid? And repair. What sort of repair work are you going to be doing to a boat? Say you have some guy come in, with a cruising catamaran, and he has his own system in there. Are you going to work on that? So in other words, the risk, control of the risk, 100%, is being borne by the owner, okay? You have to trust. And who are our boat owners today? I'll tell you who our boat owners are. We have boat owners that are willing to spend $20,000 on a joystick steering system for a center console because they don't want to spend the time to learn how to dock their boat. And that guy is going to be responsible for his lithium ion system? Will the owners step up and accept the liability when there's a fire? I'm sure that's going to happen. You have a fire, the owner's going to say, hey, don't worry about it, it's on me. Here's my MasterCard. All those docks that got fried? No problem, right? And how will other owners look? I mean, we're terrified about all our people in the marina. You have a fire because of this. Well, whatever. I'm through ranting. That said I was done.
There you go. So, Kerry, why don't you come up and try to work? We are talking about lithium is everywhere, as we discussed already. It's in boats, it's on tenders and toys, it's in our electronics, tools and equipment, and even in vaping products. And that's something that Kerry said. In when she wrote up this slide, she said, she's seen cases where, people's faces are burned because of their vape, tools. So. I'll let you talk about the insurance end of the world and how the insurance industry is embracing lithium ion.
How the insurance industry is embracing it.
Yeah.
Or not embracing it.
Or not embracing it, yeah.
So Dan knows that my husband collects chemistry books. I'm going to take a little, I'm not kidding you.
He's an exciting guy, let me tell you. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to take a little different approach here and appeal to the emotional aspect and some of the emotional arguments that I hear when we start entering the insurance discussion. I have a boat customer who came up to me at an event and was literally yelling about the fact that the insurance industry has not caught up to the rest of the world on this topic of lithium. Let me tell you that we're not talking about liability and whether it's fair or not fair or whether it's someone's fault. We're talking about funding defense, okay? We're talking about the fact that liability is not always tied to negligence. It's tied to where it happened, how it happened, who provided it, if you just sold it, if you installed it. It can be tied to a lot of things, but it's often not tied to negligence. So that's the filter the insurance industry is using when they set up some framework to minimize their losses with respect to lithium. Because we have to decide as an industry, how are we paying for it and how are we responding to it? And my guess, I'm not going to pull the audience and put everybody on the spot, but my guess is that none of the marinas or boatyards that are in this audience are probably buying enough limit for the lithium that's coming. So if you don't buy limit, you have to have money in the bank. So I want to start off, and I'm not going to cover the chemistry, but we all know it's lighter, it's faster, it lasts longer, and it's more expensive, but we're entering this next generation of immediate gratification, immediate results. It's coming. And let me tell you, the insurance industry is not as educated as some of these brilliant people up here. The underwriters who sit behind a desk, no offense to the markets that are here, but some of the underwriters sit behind a desk and they read or see a lithium fire online. They don't care whether it's lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate. We end up with a broad stroke exclusion pertaining to all lithium from that market. So there are markets that completely exclude lithium. Then there are markets that say, it's not the intent of our policy to cover lithium. So even though they may not have a black and white exclusion, if they know a boat has lithium and it's produced with lithium from the beginning, they're not going to cover it. They're just not going to cover the boat in the beginning. So lithium's everywhere. Where does it have the greatest hazard or financial impact if there's a fire? So we lose control of these. So I was talking to Dan when we decided to do this class, and I told him, so we run an internship with colleges, and we have a stack of laptops that, of course, are sitting in my husband's office, and one of the laptop batteries exploded. I couldn't figure out why they were like shifting, but the entire keyboard just bubbled up. I should have brought it, but I just was a little nervous bringing it on the plane because over time it's gotten larger and larger. So even though we're on the technical side, we're kind of minimizing these, smaller device situations. I did talk to Dan about the fact that Chubb actually had a claim where somebody was using a vaping product and the product exploded in the person's face. So they had a bodily injury claim that was pretty significant. So we don't want to just minimize it. We want to prepare for it financially with either enough money in the bank or enough limits in our insurance. So we've already talked about with the other people up here where all of these lithium products exist. I don't need to add to that scare tactic, but as a marina owner or a boatyard, you can't control where these products are. What you can control is how you educate your very highly paid staff, right? So I may be on a different
You want me to
slide,
go
but
back?
I'm going to talk a little bit about how to bring some awareness to your staff. So you have a staff meeting and you want to talk to your staff about, you know, if you see something, say something. If you notice that a lithium battery has a different odor or color or shape, or that it's leaking, or that it has cracks, or it's separating, you want your staff to bring that to your attention. So this is where, you know, we begin with this topic, is just creating awareness, because as we've already talked about, the standards are coming. The other challenge is, you know, if you are installing batteries in your facility, you know, you at least have some management over that. You have some control, you have some knowledge, you know when there are battery issues. But for all these other marinas out here who didn't raise their hands about installation or selling batteries, you don't have control over what the boat owners in your facility are doing. So, you know, you may not know if they're bringing toys into your facility. You may not know if they're bringing a subcontractor, because they don't always tell you they're bringing a subcontractor. You don't know if they had a battery go bad and they actually noticed one of these issues with their battery and they went on Amazon. You know, you can go on Amazon and find an aftermarket battery from China for 10% of the cost. And, you know, we've already talked about some of those situations. You don't know if they're going onto YouTube and installing it themselves, either with a toy or on their boat. So that aftermarket issue, it's not just an issue for marinas. It's an issue for anybody who's selling products. It's an issue for anyone who is bringing a product from China, because if you are bringing a product into your parts department to resell it and it's coming directly from China, you actually take the liability as the manufacturer, not the distributor, because they can't bring a lawsuit in China. So from a liability perspective, you're the first offense. Let's talk about the fact that, you know, even if we could deal with this issue of fire suppression, we could manage it all, we could contain it all, you need a chemical to interrupt the explosion. And you're going to see that lithium exclusions and limitation wording in insurance is very broad, like I said. So, you know, I would expect to see that wording in insurance policies would be similar with respect to any kind of chemical, poison gas, and the bodily injury it can cause, even to firefighters.
Hey, Kerry, can you get into some of the hold harmless agreements and some of the ways to manage the customer and the customer expectation, and, you know, kind of shift that responsibility off the boatyard, off the marina, and back to the customer?
Yeah, well, is it shifting responsibility, or is it shifting who's paying out on
Or
that?
liability.
Right. So I'm not an attorney. This is not to be construed as legal advice. I did go to law school, and I'll tell you that hold harmless agreements don't hold up in some jurisdictions. So they're a good way to discourage people from suing you, but they're not always going to be your safety net. But you can put something in place that basically says that your customers or your subcontractors are responsible for that. You can, what's kind of a better safety net for you is making sure that your subcontractors who are coming into your facility actually have limits that are equal to yours, and that they're listing you as additional insured, not additional interest, but additional insured. If they list you as additional insured, you have defense rights under their policy. So that's going to help you as well. As far as, you know, transferring risk, you know, you can only transfer risk either contractually or in other ways if you know what's going on. So does that answer the question? So let's talk about like how the paper flows with that. So you have a subcontractor coming into your facility. You're going to want to make sure you see a certificate of insurance from them don't ask for the whole insurance policy because you don't want to become the insurance expert trying to interpret what that means. But ask for an insurance certificate, make sure it's signed, make sure it's dated, make sure that it specifically reflects the type of work that they're doing, the duration of the work, and that it lists you as additional insured on that certificate. Where a lot of facilities fall short is they don't get the renewal certificate. They get it when they come in the door for the first job, and then they don't have a good system to follow up for it in year 2. Remember, that certificate doesn't just reference, their coverage for that day. It references products completed operations so that if anything comes back to you later, you have a record of that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, sure.
How are we doing
100%.
on time?
We're doing okay. We got a few more minutes to go.
All right, very good. So fire suppression, we have had marine facilities that actually invite the fire department to come in. And one of the learning exercises with that pertaining to lithium is that a lot of fire departments don't know what to do with lithium fires. They don't have the awareness that we also don't have. The biggest thing that'll do is bring awareness to the fire departments that they need to address this. The other thing, too, is we have environmentalists who really are not in favor of the chemicals that put out lithium fires. And we need people that would come from the fire departments to help with that argument.
Currently, the known substance right now is Fe500. And it's an encapsulation foam, and that's what's being used, and it's highly toxic.
Yeah.
It's toxic in the water. It's not really something you want to have hanging around your marina, but it is the one chemical right now that are being used by the firefighting teams to attack a lithium-ion-based fire.
But, even with that, I'm just thinking from a practical perspective how long it takes me to get dressed. If there's a lithium fire, do I even have time,
No.
even as a firefighter, to get one of these
And Jonathan, I
hazard
think you can
suits on
talk.
if it was available?
Jonathan, you can talk to how fast fire spread. I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen it many times.
There's a mic right there.
Get your mic on right there. There you go.
Test.
There you go.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what starts it. Once the polyester resin starts burning, your chances of putting that out are pretty tough. They're pretty tough. I mean, if you do just have the lithium itself, that's a metal fire, and suppressing that is really difficult. Just to go back to your suppression, I think that's really interesting. So if you have a department that does foam it down and does sink the boat, which of course they're going to do, right? They're going to sink the boat to prevent the other boats. Well, now you have a toxic hazardous waste spill. Whose responsibility is that?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for that?
What's that?
No one has a policy that's going to cover that.
No one has a policy that's going to cover that. There you go. So vessel policies have required insurance for pollution, sudden and accidental pollution. Marinas have sudden and accidental pollution coverage. The issue then becomes, as Jonathan said before, who's going to step up to the plate and say, oh yeah, that was my bad. I installed that battery the wrong way. That's why the boat burned. It'll be on my policy. That's not going to happen. You're going to have 10 people from 10 different insurance companies all pointing the finger at somebody else, and it's going to be a 3-year process. So
even if we figure out the percentage of negligence or fault or who should pay in a scenario like that, keep in mind that sudden and accidental pollution on most commercial insurance for boatyards and marinas is only $300,000. And that's if you're buying it.
Right.
Okay. On a boat, well, first of all, the boat owners don't have to buy this. So if they have a Lloyd's of London policy, they probably don't have it. It's not required by law. There is a federal statute, the OPA, Oil Pollution Act, that requires that a boat owner be responsible financially for $1,076,000. That's the latest number. But it doesn't say they have to buy insurance for that. So you're making the assumption that, if you can cap it at $1,076,000, that the boat owner has that money in the bank. And that's not insurance that most marinas would check. So I want to talk a little bit about how we can control this as a marina owner, a boatyard owner, a service provider. Here are the questions you need to be asking. Do we allow toys? Do we prohibit them? Do we do it by contract, by micromanaging? Which would mean, of course, you're executing contracts with your boat owners. You're executing contracts with your subcontractors. Do you require that subcontractor installation of batteries meet certain standards, or that they're not using aftermarket batteries? And how do you manage that? Can you physically separate the boats that have lithium with a firewall? Can you put them in a different place in your facility? Maybe with a road or a pathway between them that could act as a natural fire barrier, so the fire doesn't travel. Can you consider keeping lithium away from areas with high concentration of value? So I go through this really sick exercise with people who have dry stacks, and we figure out the maximum aggregate of values in the dry stack, and I tell them, okay, well, you're requiring $300,000 from each boat owner. If your dry stack is, there's a mathematical calculation that goes into this, and this is how we determine how much insurance limit they should buy. But if your dry stack is, 25% full and there's a lithium fire in the dry stack and you can only collect, $300,000 from the boat owners who gave you insurance, what are you left holding the bag on? Do you have enough money in the bank? Do you have enough insurance limit? And when you run out of insurance limit, are you prepared to hire a TPA and set up a separate bank account for them to manage all the extra claims that come in after the fact? Remember, it's not about negligence. It's about the fact it happened on your premises. So we have boatyards and we have marine facilities that put lithium boats in a separate area, not in a dry stack. We have facilities that restrict lithium toys of certain types in certain areas of the facility. Might be something that you could consider if you're not buying enough insurance limit. We look at the physical proximity of those toys. So
I had written down a couple questions for the panel. Are the manufacturers of the toys that are from out of the country, are they required to use UL? Yeah, I will. To use UL or to follow some sort of standard, if we know.
Hear me? Oh, good. I can buy a battery on eBay, on Amazon. There are actually websites you can go to for used lithium battery resales. There's no standards for these manufacturers outside the country, but whoever resells it in the U.S. becomes the manufacturer because they're the first place it lands in the U.S. So they take the liability.
So
there's no standard. We can't impose
no standard, and there's no stamping on anything. I've done a lot of research.
No.
And what we're finding is the equipment is not approved.
No.
And the other thing that we're finding is what's leading to a lot of these small battery fires is the charging equipment is failing. I had an engineer look at one as an example. And these little chargers, when they fail, they go full wide open throttle. They don't fail and stop charging the battery. They just hit it with everything.
Yep.
And that's what we're finding in the marinas. I'm just letting everybody know, you got to be careful with all this because, like I said, we've had a bunch of fires. We have people throwing electric bikes in the water when they catch fire on the docks. We have people storing electric vehicles in their boats, plugging the chargers in and leaving for the week. Under the premise they're going to come back at the end of the week and my kid's scooter and the hoverboard and everything else is going to be ready to go. So it's a serious problem. Never mind the propulsion batteries. This is getting out of control quick. And we have a lot of insurance. We have a lot of insurance carriers, and we're talking to them about it. But frankly, with all due respect, they don't know what to do. Like the fire department doesn't know what to do when they show up. They just basically, we had a golf cart burst into flames about 2 weeks ago in the middle of a parking lot, brand new. Guy just bought it. When the fire department showed up, all they did was clear the area and let the thing just burn to the ground. They have no way to fight it. They don't want hydrofluoric acid, if I'm not mistaken, is what is generated. That's exactly what they said. We're not going to get anywhere near it. So it just basically burned a big hole in the parking lot.
And I think your best response from an insurance perspective is that they're not going to exclude it on your policy because you can't control all the boats that are coming in. So you want to make sure it's not excluded and that you're buying enough limit, because if it's not excluded and it's a gray area in the policy, then they're going to have an obligation to respond. But they're only going to respond up until, they erode the limits and there's no limit left.
Thank you.
I was going to mention it. I'm going to mention one product, and those of us with gray hair will remember. One product is an answer to a lot of this. The Ford Pinto. That what controls a lot of this is a gigantic, heavy stick with barbed wire around it. Until some company gets a crippling judgment, it's going to continue to happen.
I said I wasn't going to pick on you there, Terry. All right. I'm jumping in.
So my question is from the towing and salvage perspective. We have to do more about this to understand. When that boat sinks, battery's intact, is it going to light off in some way once it's on the surface again? Even a regular lead acid battery will do that should it short out. A lot of things happen there. But if there was a fire, that boat sinks, then it's raised again. We've got a compromised system. So what am I looking at there?
What did your testing show? You guys did some of this. They did some of this testing at ABYC. What did your testing show?
Yes, so we did actually some testing because it's kind of difficult to obtain any real data from either insurance companies or the fire investigators. Not to point any fingers here, but so we did some in-house testing on lithium iron phosphate batteries, since that's the type that most commonly installed on boats. We did overcharging, over-discharging, mechanical damage in. I just drove some nails through the battery cell, and submersion was one of the tests. So several scenarios. We submerged the batteries that were in salt water and fresh water, under load, disconnected from load. The one thing that we observed at that submersion test was that severe street current corrosion to the battery and battery terminals. After pulling the battery out of the water, really nothing happened. We temp tested that. There was no thermal event. But in reality, on the boat system, when that corrosion happens, you will have corroded terminals, corroded wires. So you can create some high resistance spots that basically will create the hot spots, and that can cause the fires. Of course, the testing didn't cover all the scenarios, and there are other possibilities, but that was just my experience. And it was kind of similar with all the other testing. If anybody is interested, we can chat about that, and I can get further into that.
Thank you. Question?
Is there any difference in safety from saltwater to freshwater with this kind of stuff?
We hit an absolutely. Looks like we're in church here.
Well, obviously saltwater is going to be worse. I was going to mention, Dan and I had a case in Rhode Island where the battery itself did not get wet, but the installer. Now this is like one of the most highly respected installers in the state, engineers and all of that, and one of their certified installers decided to put the charging equipment and I think one of the shunts in the bilge of a sailboat that heels. But my point is the battery didn't go under, but some of the components, the charging components, went under, and the battery cooked off. And yes, it could get wet, you could have a fire, you could suppress it, and it could cook off again. I've heard that. Multiple relights, yeah.
I'm afraid we're out of time. If there's any other quick question, we'll try to get to it. But if not, we appreciate you coming today. I hope you got something out of this session. I really appreciate the three of you, taking some time to do this. I think it's an important topic. I think we're all going to be seeing it going into the future. I really do. Take care, everybody. Enjoy docks.